Good morning. Hi. I will open with a personal story from the year 2000, not so dissimilar to Ursula, where being successful at my job meant spending many long hours in my office at my desk. Now, my children at the time were 8 and 5 years old. And I had a very supportive husband who was very involved in raising the kids. And I was the vice president of marketing at Amazon, where I loved every minute of my exciting job. But many evenings I would go home with a churning stomach. I felt guilty walking out past my team who were still slaving away at their desks. But I would walk in the front door at home. And I would also feel guilty to see that my children had already eaten their dinner. They had had their baths, and they were getting ready to go to bed. And my daughter would constantly ask me, you see, a lot of evenings I would call back to the office. It was my way of plugging back in. And she would say, Mom, can you please make your phone calls from my room? And so I would do that. I would hold her soft little hand, and she would go to sleep to the sound of my voice. Not talking to her, though, but talking to other people about the day's business. And so it went until one day I thought that I and they deserved more. Because at that time, work was a place. And I couldn't be in two places, at work and at home with them at the same time. And so I was really, really sad. But I left my exciting job at Amazon. Now, it's July 15th, 2013. And as Ursula mentioned, after 13 years of technology magic, a new world of work is emerging, and one that would not necessarily have forced someone like me to make such a binary choice. Now, the future of work has many, many facets to it. But if I had to summarize them, I would choose these words, if this would advance. Work is no longer a place. Let me ask all of you, how many of you have brought your smartphones or your iPads here to the conference? Show of hands. In fact, how many of you brought your offices with you to DLD Women? That's essentially what you've done. Think about that. For centuries, we brought the worker to the work. Now, we can bring the work to the worker. Let's consider a CEO that I know named Jay Shapiro. Very successful CEO. He used to run a company of 200 employees in 3 offices, which he sold. And he now has a new company, also a very, very successful technology company. And I would like to show you his world headquarters. He operates this company out of this. That's right, the eco-roamer. So Jay now travels the world with his family, and he says he works as many hours as he ever did before. And he has 30 people under him. And they work from places as far away as Tunisia and Turkey and Louisiana and New Jersey. A digital nomad. Now, how is this possible? Well, I think you all know that with technologies like Skype and Google Docs and GitHub and Google Hangouts, teams can come together in flexible fashion and work together collaboratively. Of course, I can imagine what you're all thinking at this minute, which is that freedom and flexibility are wonderful. But what about the interaction that nurtures our souls? Well, there's lots of creative solutions to that issue as well. Here's Beta House in Berlin, a co-working space like many, many co-working spaces that are mushrooming around the world, allowing startups and flexible workers to come together and to take inspiration and creativity from each other. At my company, Odesk in Silicon Valley, we all gather in the office 4 days a week. But every Tuesday, we all work from home. We all save the drive and 20% of the fossil fuels that we would otherwise burn on a weekly basis. Now, is the future of work entirely rosy? Well, of course not. We've already heard mention of that. Certainly, freedom and flexibility are wonderful, but we as a society need to come together to figure out how we don't compromise things like decent access to health care and a steady income and work-life balance. We also need to start thinking about the ways in which we as individuals succeed in this future of work. So for the second half of my short talk, I'll turn my attention to the 7 habits, what I think of as the 7 habits of successful people in the future of work. So, habit number 1, craft your personal brand. What do I mean by that? Well, think of the mental shortcuts that we all use to make sense of people who we don't know very well. The gifted musician, the genius with big data, the crack coder. As managers are starting to look to compose fluid projects and teams and look for certain characteristics, the importance of personal brand is increasing. So how do you think about that? How do you go about identifying your personal brand? Especially, I'm speaking more to some of the younger women in the group now. Well, think of it this way. When someone encounters you for the very first time, what do you want them to think? What do you bring to the table? What's that one thing you bring to the table that's unique? How do you want to be remembered? Once you've identified your personal brand, of course you have to earn it. You have to deliver on it consistently. And then you need to make sure to promote it, to be present in the places that your audience cares about, whether it be Zing or Twitter or LinkedIn or meetups or conferences like this one. Habit number 2, focus on the 20%. Okay, let's all ask ourselves a very honest question. Think back over the last year of all the work you did. And try and calculate what proportion of the time you spent on work that actually had an impact on your business, that actually really made a difference to your company or your professional goals, and what percent of the time you were just busy. There's a big difference between progress and motion. And in this results-oriented economy, progress and impact is more important than ever. So how do you distinguish the two? Well, obviously, it depends on your situation, but it begins with a framework for thinking about how to create ruthless prioritization. And the framework that I use is one I call the 20% rule. 20% of the effort gets 80% of the results. So on a constant basis, I ask myself and I ask my team, are we working on the 20%? And guess what? A lot of the times, we kind of aren't. And we cancel it. And when we use this litmus test, we make a lot of adjustments. It's really hard to walk away from stuff you feel like you should be doing, but isn't really moving the needle. But that's critical. Habit number 3, prioritize people. So when I graduated from business school, I had 2 job offers. One was with a traditional database company for what seemed to me like a lot of money at the time. The other was with a spin-out of Apple Computer, with a lot of innovative people in it. And I really agonized because the salary gap was so huge and I was so young at the time. But in the end, I chose the company with the innovative people. And I am certain that that changed the course of my life. Not only did I learn from the very best people, but some of those people went on to become Silicon Valley legends. And they brought me my next opportunities. Choose around the best people, and those people will open doors for you. Habit 4, evolve yourself every day. It used to be that we went to university, then we went to work. Now, with the need for skills changing so rapidly, no matter how seasoned you are, no matter how experienced you are, you need to be nimble. With options like Coursera and General Assembly and so on, successful people think of learning as a lifelong, continuous, and daily pursuit. Habit 5, articulate solutions, not problems. So I'll give you an example. A little while ago, I hired 3 freelancers, as it turns out on Odesk, to do the same short little project. I needed someone to compare wage rates around the world. Now, why did I hire 3 people? Well, actually, I had a much bigger project to follow, and I wanted to see who was going to do the best job. There was a problem with my assignment, though, which is that it was really hard to do an apples-to-apples comparison because countries calculate wages differently. All three of the freelancers were eager to do good work, and all three came back very quickly and said, wait, there's a problem in how you've assigned it. And two of them said, what would you like me to do about it? But the third one said, here's the problem, and here's my recommendation for how to solve it. Who do you think got the big job? Of course, it's very important to flag problems early, but successful people come with solutions. Now, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, habit number 6, think outside the talent box. Let's say you started a company and you need some talent. You're no longer limited to whoever happens to live within 25 or 50 kilometers of where you happen to be. Let's say you need some graphic design done and the most talented person is a part-time mom who lives in the north of Germany. Now you can go ahead and hire that person. Now, how do you make this all work? What if you've got some remote workers? What if you have a blend of people in your office and some of them who are remote? This brings me to the 7th and final habit, and probably the most important for the future of work. You need to focus on building a high-performance culture, especially for your remote team. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you've hired someone that's not in your office, maybe they're working with you over the internet, like Jay Shapiro and his 30 people, you can't do this if you're a bad manager. This is not for bad managers. This takes some good management. But if you're a good manager, here's the trick. Take the very best practices you use to motivate and inspire and lead people in your office and intensify those and use those for your remote workers. For example, make sure you have really crisp, clear, written goals and objectives with clear milestones and deadlines and measurements. For heaven's sakes, you should have written objectives for people in your office, but you certainly need them for your remote workers. You should check in with them as often as you check in with people in the next cubicle. You should treat them as kindly as people in your office. You should give feedback frequently, whether it's a course correction or whether it's praise or thanks or a small bonus. At Odesk, at my company, we have more than 300 contractors around the world, and we use these practices, these and other in-office best practices to manage that team. So, I've talked about how work is no longer a place. And I know how that can seem disorienting or even disruptive, maybe even a little bit scary for some of the reasons Ursula alluded to earlier. But I do want to say this. I think if we implement this shift well, there is so much upside here. Think of the gifted programmer in a remote part of the country. Think of the disabled English to French translator who can't easily leave the house. Think of the person in a rural part of Germany who's caring for a disabled parent, who may be a graphic designer, whose work may be priceless. Think of the talent that they and all of you have to offer. And think of the talent that all of you as entrepreneurs can take advantage of. I think if we manage this shift well, we will create opportunities for freedom and prosperity that we have never seen before. Thank you.